Nicolas Tenzer, a French civil servant, academic, writer, and editor, and a very fine gentleman. If you ask me, he's with us tonight at the UATV English. Mr. Tenzer, hello.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for welcoming me again.
Yes, an exquisite pleasure. You're a great intellectual. This is why I'm just craving to know. Transatlantic Union. Just educate me. I was in Munich. I was actually listening to J.D. Vance's speech. And I was, there were like, I don't know, 1,000 my colleagues, journalists from all over the world were sitting and typing and everything. They've seen probably everything in their lives sitting like this, heads down. And while he starts speaking and they start to understand, to comprehend what he's telling us, what he's talking about, heads are starting to rise and eyes are starting to roll over. So is transatlantic union dead? NATO is no more as well. United Nations is almost no more. Am I right?
Well, unfortunately, yes, I would say, because I think that I'm not saying that forever. I mean, the
Mm,
transatlanticism is dead, but for the time being, and as long as Trump is in office,
right.
unfortunately, I think it is for many different kind of reasons. The first one is that the ideology of Trump resembles Putin's ideology, and I don't see any kind of difference, such as, for instance, the full contempt of the rule of law, the full contempt for the life of the
Mm,
people,
mm,
the
right.
full contempt for the freedom of the country, the neglect for the so-called small and middle-sized nations,
Right.
and the praise of the great powers, even dictatorships like Russia and maybe as well China.
Mhm.
So basically, I think that you were referring to G. Vance's speech. If we consider what Mr. Trump himself is talking about, for instance, well, Ukraine is responsible for well its own invasion,
Exactly.
or
Right.
let's say, I don't know. I mean, the fact that. There was absolutely no mentions of the war crimes, crimes against humanity, crime of genocide
Mm, mm,
perpetrated by the Russians. It shows that he has, I mean, a post-truth conception of the world. Truth doesn't matter, the right of the people doesn't matter, the freedom doesn't matter. There is only relationships based on pure force and attacked on the freedom of the people. And that's not Western values. We can, of course, blame the US for many things that it does during its own history, or indeed in the
mm,
past. We can blame the US for Vietnam. We can blame the US also partly for the Second War, in Iraq. We can blame, of course, the US for many things. But if we consider still the conceptions that the US has,
right.
it was the beacon of freedom. And it was a kind of example. So I quite often criticizes the US for what it did or what it didn't,
Mm,
especially
right.
what it didn't, during Obama's term or also Biden's term. I
Exactly.
think we could
Right.
have supported, I mean, Ukraine much more. But no, we have in a kind of moment of reversal of alliances,
Mm.
and that's pretty new. And I must say, it was unexpected, even if we were no warned about Trump's danger.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. But to be honest with you, I have a lot of colleagues in America, like professional, people working for Washington Post, people working for the New York Post, the New York Daily, Telegraph, Time Mag. They all say that America is now in the utter shock, and like no one expected, and the constituency of Donald Trump is, also shocked. So my question is, and I also see the millions of pro-Ukrainian voices, millions, like every comment has tens of thousands or not pro-Ukrainian sources like CNN. It never was very much pro-Ukrainian.
Yes.
But now I've seen millions of people because now Trump is their problem together with Ukraine. Like he stabbed Zelensky in the back. It never happened before. You can play political games, you can squeeze the mineral out of Ukraine, but you do it in a way that is insulting and scary to Americans. And Americans are starting to rise. Am I right? So, do you believe that Trump can make it to the end of the tenure, to the end of his term, presidential term?
Well, I would say that, of course, I see, I mean, the protest, I see, of course, the outrage, including among some Republicans. But the problem is that Trump and also Elon Musk and the cronies are destroying all the
Right.
counterweights. That's a problem. Just see, what happened, in the Senate. You had, I mean, the confirmation of the people who were supposed to be siding with Russia. Let's say Tulsi Gabbard, for instance. We remember her stances about Syria and Ukraine and Russia, in the past.
Right.
We had, of course, some people who were convicted for misconduct, personal misconduct.
Right.
We had some conspiracy theorists also coming into office, including in the vaccines, and everything was approved by the Senate during the confirmation hearings.
Mm.
That's the first thing. Then we have, of course, the Supreme Court, but of course, the Supreme Court is not competent on everything. We had, of course, a very courageous judges trying, of course, to stand up to Trump. But unfortunately, you don't have many. And do you see any big demonstrations, in the street? We had some demonstration, I mean, in the
Mm.
US,
Right. Right.
but very few, very few. And the problem is, of course, you have the counterweights of the democratic states. I mean, the states which was governors are, I mean, from the Democratic Party, but you don't have so many, not have so many. And the
Okay.
problem is that he has the majority in the House, both, I mean,
Right.
the House of Representatives and the Senate. So I mean, unfortunately, I mean, he can go, I mean, to its term, and maybe some considers that he could do a third term, which will be, of course, a breach of the constitution.
But who cares? I mean,
Maybe, but it
he
could
can
happen.
just take a constitution. Putin did that already, so he's close friends. So you just take a constitution, just stripes out the "We the People" and puts "We the People" or Donald Trump, and that's it. It's going to work for them, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe Americans will show him where is his place. Because I mean,
Let's hope
I'm
so.
saying again, it is yes. Because I mean, people are shocked. Absolutely, he's destroying the checks. He's unchecking the checks and unbalancing the balances. The founding fathers of America didn't want the dictatorship. They afraid exactly that. And Trump being an embodiment of democracy, because only inside the democracy you can vote for someone like Trump. Trump is right now demolishing everything. So people are afraid, like, oh, they didn't know maybe that with a couple of executive orders, you just completely I mean, grind all the political machinery in the United States. This is what is going on. But I mean, let's talk about France. France is also shocked, right? And
Absolutely.
Macron met exactly. So Emmanuel Macron met Trump to do what? Like to educate the Tsar, the American king, who is invaded and who is invader, who's the dictator. What? What for?
Well, first of all, I say that, I mean, I won't blame Macron for trying.
Yeah, no, no,
Probably,
absolutely. Yeah,
of course, if I
right.
was the president, certainly I would have done exactly the same, trying to
Mm,
convince Trump. But the problem is that Trump is its own connective bubble in a way.
right.
And you see, the exchanges or the opinions expressed by both President Macron and Trump. Completely different, and we also perfectly
Mm,
know that Trump could say something one day, another thing the other day, and some things also completely different, 1 week
absolutely.
after. And the problem is also that Trump said some things that was a kind of fantasy. I was yesterday night in a TV show, commenting. I mean, what Trump and Macron said during the meeting. And
Mm,
Trump said, for instance, I received some influences by Putin that he could accept boots on the ground, in
Right.
Ukraine.
Right.
And just, one day after, the Kremlin, as he did before, denied and say, no, no, we cannot accept that. So, I mean, it was something, probably, it was not a lie, maybe by Trump, but it was something like, let's say, a kind of fantasy. It's something
It
that he
is a
invented.
fantasy.
And
It is a
he persuaded himself that Trump, but Putin said that,
right.
and in fact, he didn't.
I
You
mean,
see,
this is the yeah, right. Pardon me. I mean, the thing is that I also can see that because I just need to read some pro-Kremlin stuff and propaganda and everything, and they are very careful in saying that Trump is their ally. Actually, I mean, in terms of actions, because they just can't trust him. This is a very check and mate situation, very strange situation where he says Putin holds the cards. Let's do business, not war, whatever. Forget about Ukraine. But the Putin understands that all the big business needs time and money, like billions of dollars, not rubles, of course, coming from America to Russia, and it takes years, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And if Trump goes, the next president, here we go. So nobody knows what to expect. And I'm absolutely sure that Trump has no plan whatsoever. Am I right?
absolutely. Absolutely. I think that Trump has absolutely no plan. He just wants to do business with Russia, and that will be
Mm.
certainly very dangerous. I mean, for Europe and for the future of Ukraine. Because just imagine, and it was, mentioned, after the talk in Riyadh between Secretary
Right.
Marco Rubio and Lavrov, that there could be new business links and new engagements, in the of the US, in Russia, new
Mm.
investments, and it means that we could have a kind of lifting of sanctions. And you know that the state of the Russian economy, which is, I mean, certainly not quite well, with in big
Looking at the ruble,
inflation,
yes.
when interest rates are very high, with the ruble, you're just plummeting, dramatically. And the
Unbelievable.
problem is that that Trump could save Putin from a kind of bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And then it means that then it will be very easier. It will be easier for Russia to rearm, and then 2, 3, or 4 years after, it will give, I mean, the power to the Kremlin to attack Ukraine again, and also to attack some of the EU country, because the trustworthiness and the credibility of the security guarantees, or so-called security guarantees, and of
Mm.
the deterrence
Oh,
itself will be certainly completely damaged, or
right.
becoming null and void. And in fact, something that what I fear. It means that the only force of resistance, basically, right now, is in Europe. And by Europe, I mean not only the EU, but of course, can associate, of course, the UK and Norway, and maybe some other country, like, let's say, Canada,
Yeah,
of course, maybe
absolutely. I mean,
Australia, Japan, and some like-minded countries that understand perfectly that if Trump basically push Ukraine, under the bus, then the next on the list will be not only Europe, but certainly Taiwan, because that will be also a signal that
mm,
there will be no more
that's right.
security
Right.
guarantee in Asia as well.
Mm. And that leads us to another question and last question for tonight. In terms of Europe, I know, I talk to people, I know many in the military, and the power is huge. It is huge. The military power, the economical, the political power. We in Europe lack only will to do it. So if we find the will, say we find the will, and we really want our security to be on a different level, to detached from United States, and to be absolutely firm, and to do what actually defense does, to defend us from the dictator. What do we do first thing? What do you think? What do you suggest we're doing? Like you're in charge, you have all the money and all the power. What do you do with the security in Europe now?
First of all, I will turn our economies into war economies. That's the first thing to do. And war economy is, as you know, in Ukraine, is not just creating and manufacturing some more weapons. Is basically turning all the economy, as the US did, in 1941,
Right.
into an economy devoted to war. It means that you have civil industries and you have some laws in France and in many European countries that could allow the state to decide by executive orders to transform those civil economies into war
Right.
industries. And I
Put
think
it in
that
the
the
war
first thing
race.
to
Right.
do if we consider that the threat is really serious, and I do, we have to
Makes two of
take
us.
exceptional measures. Then we have, of course, to create all the resources needed in order to boost our weapons industries. We are spending in France 2.1% of our GDP for defense. It must
Mm.
be 4 or 5. Same for the UK, same for Italy, same for Germany, same for Spain.
Right.
And I think we have to do so. We have many opportunities. Of course, we have to make choices in terms of budget allocations, of course. We have certainly to issue Euro bonds. We have, as Macron suggested, probably to take part of, the deposits that the people have in the bank, to transform them into loans in order to boost our defense industry. And I am sure that will have, at the end of the day, also very positive effects on our
Economy.
industrial capacities
Yes.
in terms of innovation.
Absolutely.
Just see what happened with the DARPA, in the 60s, in the US, which was a
Right.
huge agency devoted to the funding of research in military things. And it had a spiraling out effect, a very positive one, in the civil industry. Basically, the internet as we know it, which was basically an
Just
invention
by the way.
of the US,
Right.
was due to all the investments that they made, I mean, the US, in defense industry.
Mm.
So we have to explain that to the people, but we have to talk to the people, I mean, to the public opinion, in Europe, to make them aware of the threats posed by Russia.
Right.
Because many of the Western leaders, Western European leaders, not in the Eastern and Central Europe, but in the Western Europe, many often said, "Well, we are not in war with Russia,"
Exactly. Not yet.
and that's a problem. We are at war with Russia in a way because Russia has declared us the war. I understand that
Absolutely.
the most of the leaders cannot say we are at war with Russia officially, but we cannot say that we are not at war with Russia. We have to make the people understand why we have to protect Ukraine, to defend Ukraine, uh, whatever victory takes.
Whatever
Not as
victory it
long as it
takes.
takes, but whatever victory takes. And I think that's a narrative of Ukraine's victory. That's something that I wrote in my last piece, that we have certainly to make people understand. And I am not comfortable with the very idea of peace talks, negotiations. And I would
Right.
suggest, and I often suggest it, in fact, the Western leader to refrain using those words because they are very misleading.
Right.
And last but not least, I think we cannot accept that Russia keeps in grips on some part of Ukrainian territories, because we know that the occupied territories, we are witnessing day after day deportation of children, collective rapes, tortures, summary executions.
Right.
And we cannot give Putin a license to kill. And we have to express that. And I think the Western leaders, because if they are really and sincerely standing for the values of Europe and the very principles of Europe, they have to say we cannot accept that.
Great. And nicely put words, whatever it takes, whatever it takes to the victory, whatever the victory takes. Thank you so very much, Mr. Tenzier. I mean, when we say we, the collective Europe, you're bringing me back. I believe that maybe we are a collective Europe. Maybe we really share these values. And if we have people like you advocating for us, maybe we have hope. So thank you so very much.
My
Nicolas
pleasure,
Tenzier is a
really.
French, yes, French civil servant, great academic writer, and as I told you, a great gentleman and personality was with us at Creative English. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely conversation. Thank you so very much. I just need to go. I would love to do it again.
No, please, please,
Uh,
please. I have also,
all
I
right.
am a little bit busy those days.
All right. Thank
Also,
you.